Hello and welcome to this video lecture on imperialism. Today what we're going to look at is two examples of imperialism and if imperialism can be resisted. We've seen over the last few lessons that it seems like the Europeans with their superior technology because of the Industrial Revolution seem to be overpowering everyone that's in their path. We're going to look at two examples today. We're going to look at China and we're going to look at Japan, and we're going to take a look to see if either of these examples can provide us with the answer to the question, can it be resisted? Let's start with China. China has had a long and prosperous history. They have been trading with the Europeans since the 1400s. They don't really think too much of the Europeans. They are so little of the trade that China engages with, so they don't really, necessarily bother with them too much. However, as we get into the 1700s and then even into the 1800s, China starts looking at Europe in a different way because China starts buying things from the Europeans that the Chinese really, really like. The Europeans, specifically the British, are going to start growing a new plant called opium in some of their colonies. They're going to start selling it to the Chinese in huge numbers. At its height, the opium addictions that's going to take place in China is going to approximately impact about a half of all government employees, including the family of the emperor. So the Chinese are going to end up, after decades of dealing with this problem, they're going to go ahead and ban opium. However, that's going to put a big strain on the British government because one out of every $4 that is produced from the British Empire is going to be from selling drugs to the Chinese. So when they try to take away 25% of their total income from the world, the British respond in just the way that you would expect the British to respond. They send in the military. The Navy shows up, and we have what's called the Opium War between China and Great Britain. After the devastating defeat of the Chinese by the British superior navy, they sign a treaty known as the Treaty of Nanjing. The Treaty of Nanjing is going to be known as something as an unequal treaty because it's going to give all the power and all the benefits to the Europeans and none of the benefits to China. It's essentially going to downgrade China from a world superpower to a second-class nation that the Europeans are going to take advantage of. Part of these European treaties, these unequal treaties, are these awesome trade deals, which the Europeans are able to buy things at much cheaper rates, and also the granting of extraterritoriality, which we will discuss in class. Following this defeat in the Opium Wars, which was a big shock to most Chinese people, the Chinese are going to lose again to a traditionally subservient neighbor of theirs, the Japanese. The Japanese are going to be on the rise at the exact same time as China is falling apart, and they're going to have a little war in Korea called the Sino-Japanese War, and Japan is going to come out on top. So China is going to be beat by a European power, which they saw as inferior. They're going to be beat by a Japanese power, which they saw as inferior. And a lot of people are going to start wondering, what does this mean for the future of our country? If we're this far behind when we thought we were this awesome, what does that mean about us? And what does that mean about our future? So a lot of people start rising up in China against the government. One of the biggest rebellions was the Taiping Rebellion. You can see the image of Hong Jiguan over here on the right-hand side. He's going to be the leader of the Taiping Rebellion. After over 500,000 deaths, the Taiping Rebellion is going to be put down. In addition to the Taiping Rebellion, you're also going to have the Boxer Rebellion, which the Boxers were a martial arts group that are going to specifically target Europeans and just commit murder in the streets of these Europeans for the good of their cause. An international force of British, French, German, and actually American troops are going to be brought into places like Shanghai, and they're going to put down the Boxer Rebellion. So, kind of our big lesson to take away from China is that um, China is going to have a major problem because, unlike other countries, when the Industrial Revolution came to them, they're going to resist changing, and since they're going to resist changing, they're going to be swept up and conquered by these European nations very, very quickly. So here's your big point that you need to make sure you take away. China resisted European industrialization, therefore they were defeated by Europe's superior military technology. Let's take a look at Japan now briefly. Here's how China's going to be broken up over the course of several decades, different pieces taken by different European powers. In Japan, there's a little bit of a different situation. For hundreds of years, they had a very strict and rigid system in Japan, led by the military, called the shogun. The shogun's family was the Tokugawa family for over 200 years. The technical leader of Japan was the emperor, but he was really just the fake power, the guy that kind of signed off, the spiritual leader. The real power was with the shogun. When the Japanese saw how terrible China had responded to Europe, they decided to take a different approach. Well, most of the Japanese decided to take a different approach. The real spark that's going to start their change is going to be the arrival of the United States. In 1852, the United States is going to send a small fleet of warships to Tokyo Harbor to, as the Americans say, to open up Japan to U.S. trade, even though they didn't want to. And they did this through a very common tactic that we saw with the British, gunboat negotiations. The Americans and Europeans and the Japanese are going to sign the Treaty of Kanagawa, which is another unequal treaty. And then from there, the Americans are going to open up more ports. The emperor kind of sees this as an opportunity because for over 200 years, the emperor has just been a figurehead, and the shogun with his army of samurai, something we'll discuss more in class, have had the real power. So if the emperor can find a way to ally himself with these Americans with their superior technology, he could potentially take back the real power. This event is a pretty big event in Japanese history. It's called the Meiji Restoration. It's when the Japanese emperor retakes power from the shogun and becomes the true leader of Japan once again. So that's known as the Meiji Restoration. The reason it's called the Meiji Restoration is because the emperor who did it is Emperor Meiji. Meiji is going to start with some very basic things, such as requiring school for all students, sending out advisors and family members all around the world to observe industrialization, observe different cultures, and bring those lessons back to Japan. Japan's going to spend a tremendous amount of money updating and upgrading all of their things. They're going to ready make and package up whole trains, locomotives, railroads, telegraphs, power plants, and they're going to ship them across the Pacific Ocean from the United States, and they're going to be installed in Japan. Some are going to resist, primarily the samurai and the Tokugawa family, but because of the superior technology of the emperor, they're going to be put down very quickly. So here's kind of the big lesson to take away from Japan. Instead of resisting European advancement, they embraced industrialization and modernized to meet European power. This is going to give Japan dominance over Asia. So at the end of this imperial era, this is what the map of Asia is going to look like. All right, make sure to do your quiz following this video. Have a great evening.